Welcome back. I'm Diana and I'm here with Elaine, and we're psychologists with the Greater Essex County District School Board. We're working through three different aspects of implicit curriculum. Last time we discussed creating a schedule. Today we're going to take a look at implicit messages. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Diana. Glad to be back.
So, what are implicit messages and where are they in the learning environment?
Well, this subject has been studied extensively in the past half century, and there are different definitions and theories regarding implicit or hidden curriculum or messages.
Oh, by the way, we'll attach a reference list to this podcast so that anyone who wants to delve into this topic in more depth can do so.
That's great. For our purposes, we'll say that implicit messages relate to the lessons that children learn at school that are not part of the lesson plans. That includes everything from the way a classroom may be set up and the decorations on the walls to what researchers call teacher immediacy.
Okay, let's take this step by step. The way the furniture is set up affects what students learn?
Sure, think about it. If the teacher sets their desk up at the front of the room and the student desks in the neat rows toward the back, this makes a statement about who's in charge in the room and when it's appropriate to approach the teacher. Whether the teacher sets up desks in rows or in table groups gives a message about the importance of group discussion. What's posted on the walls and the decorations around the school, all of these things provide messages for students and teach them what the adults in their learning environment believe is important.
Ah, okay. But what does this have to do with caregivers teaching their children at home? It's pretty unlikely that they have desks to move around.
Maybe not, but the space that caregivers use to teach their children gives messages as well. For example, if a family uses the couch to lounge and relax to watch TV, then this may not be the best place to teach lessons. You may find that the child will be less likely to take the lesson seriously. It may be better to work at the kitchen table or in an office if there is one. If it's necessary to use the living room, it'd be important to set clear boundaries regarding what behaviors are expected in the room during learning time and how they're different from normally. Something as simple as hanging a whiteboard with the lesson schedule written on it in the living room when it's time for learning will provide a visual cue about the expectations for behavior for learning.
Actually, Elaine, I recall an example of a parent who had a child who struggled with attention and focus. And she cleared out a smaller closet and set it up as a cubicle, so to speak, with desks and lights and such. And then she was able to close the door when homework or study time was done.
That's a great idea if people have the space. Designating a specific workspace for paper, pencil, or computer-related work is ideal. Then, of course, there's the rest of the house and backyard, for example, for other types of interactive learning.
To add to that, Elaine, I guess most kids won't be used to having to do academics at home. So it'll be important, I assume, to set ground rules about behavior during learning time.
Right. In fact, it might be a good idea to talk to the children about the difference between what's expected of them at school and at home and come up with a set of rules for homeschool. Obviously, older children and teenagers will be likely to have experience with academic work at home since they've been having homework. But even they might struggle to get into the school mindset while lounging on the couch.
That I can understand. Okay, so then what is teacher immediacy?
Well, according to implicit communication theory, teacher immediacy is very important in learning. This is really just a fancy way of saying that the way someone teaches, so their use of eye contact, their personal space, head nods, smiles, body language, the use of inclusive language, as well as their tone, volume, rate, and pitch, all affect how a student learns.
A lot of that sounds like active listening or paying attention to how something is said and how it affects you.
It is, in part. Basically, when teachers teach, the way that they engage with the students and the subtle ways that they show they're listening and interested in both the students and the topic with their verbal and nonverbal language impacts how much and what the students learn. For example, if a teacher actively engages with the students and uses a tone that's upbeat, students are more likely to show a positive attitude towards the teacher and the subject, and they're more likely to demonstrate behavior that's expected in class. Children use adults' verbal and nonverbal behavior, which includes looks, gestures, and tone of voice, to interpret messages in order to understand directions, identify adult-pleasing behavior, and to fit in with the other kids in their class.
Okay, but no one can be upbeat all the time.
You're right. But students learn about who they are, what they're worth, and what they're capable of by absorbing consistent messages from the adults in their lives over time. A teacher, or in our case, a parent or caregiver, who's had a bad day now and again, won't affect their students negatively in the long term, especially if they use that bad day as a way of modeling how to handle it adaptively. The learning of implicit messages tends to be subtle and becomes ingrained when kids hear the same messages over and over and over again throughout their academic careers.
So then when caregivers are teaching their children at home, the same principle applies?
Yes, well, actually, the same principle applies no matter what caregivers are doing with their children.
Can you explain?
Well, without going into a whole new topic, I can say that we as people tend to pay more attention to nonverbal communication when we're trying to decide what someone means when they're talking to us. That's how sarcasm works. When children learn from their caregivers, the same applies. For example, if a caregiver says that stealing is a bad thing to do, but then steals something from a store while the child is with them, the child is likely to learn that stealing is okay because they're attending to what the caregiver is modeling or doing rather than what they said. Here's an example that's closer to our circumstances here. And it may or may not have happened in my house recently. If I'm teaching a lesson on math and I become frustrated because I don't understand the quote unquote new math the way the teacher has demonstrated it for my child, how I handle that frustration and what I say and the way I say it can teach a great deal to my children about how important math is, how competent their teacher is, and how to express frustration.
It sounds like math was not your best subject.
Not at all.
Oh, I'm in the same boat. I also see the situation as an opportunity to model how to be resourceful and independent by talking out loud about how to find resources. For example, you could verbally model your coping strategy by saying something like, okay, I don't know how to do this. Where can I find the information? Let's try khanacademy.com.
Right, exactly.
Now that I'm thinking about it, our conversation from last time and the suggestions we talked about contain a number of hidden messages as well. I imagine that providing a space for kids to express their feelings in a daily schedule would give them a message that this is an important thing and that their feelings are important too.
That's right. The schedule itself and the effort you put into being consistent and developing routine provides messages in itself about the importance of being intentional about what you do and the importance of being productive, however you choose to define that. Caregivers are in a tough situation here. Most of us aren't teachers, and for a lot of us, it's been a while since we were exposed to this curriculum. Even though teachers are now doing a great job of providing online learning activities and assignments, the fact of the matter is that our children often need support in completing these tasks.
I imagine it can be very frustrating and confusing for caregivers right now.
It can, but it also represents an opportunity.
How so?
Well, caregivers may not be experts of today's curriculum, but they're also in a unique position to provide consistent positive messages to their children about academics and their abilities, like the point you just mentioned.
Like being resourceful and independent, and also valuing critical thinking and self-reflection. But why is this opportunity so different than in the classroom?
Well, because caregivers likely have 3 or fewer children to focus on, assuming that teenagers would be somewhat self-sufficient academically, rather than the 20 to 30 children that teachers have in a classroom, and because they know their children best. That means that they're in a position to give examples related to their child's individual interests and life to help them understand concepts. At the same time, caregivers aren't bound by the same evaluation standards as teachers are. When asked, most people and researchers would say that it's more important to teach deep learning, that is, conceptual understanding of a topic rather than memorization. Unfortunately, in an education system, knowledge is often evaluated by students recalling information in writing that they've learned. Caregivers have much more leeway to create ways of teaching and evaluating what their child has learned in a way that best matches their child.
So, for example, if a child is better speaking than writing, they could provide an oral explanation for a concept or drawing, something like that?
Exactly. And attending to the child in this way teaches an implicit message that they're capable and that their effort is important. This is a luxury that teachers often don't have due to class sizes and curriculum demands.
So it sounds like implicit messages can help or harm children.
That's true. The best way to avoid harmful effects of negative implicit messages for the children we teach and care for is to foster strong critical thinking and self-reflection skills. That way, children can become aware of these messages and evaluate the truth in them for themselves.
Well, this sounds like something that might take some practice.
Absolutely. It's important to note that this does not mean that caregivers, and teachers for that matter, can't get frustrated and have to keep a sunny and unconditionally accepting disposition at all times. The concept of hidden or implicit messages helps us to see what ideas and messages we may be unknowingly giving our children and students, and reflect on whether those are the messages we want to be giving them. None of us are perfect, and this is a difficult time where many of us had added responsibilities and new roles. But if we stop to think about the messages we send with our own engagement, behavior, and reactions to things in advance, we can learn to be more mindful of the messages we send, and we can help shape confident and effective learners.
So really, we can all practice being more mindful of the messages we send to each other when communicating. I know there's a lot of information out there, especially right now, but I think it's important to note that caregivers should have confidence in their intuition about their child. As you keep saying, Elaine, caregivers know their children. We've talked about a number of strategies that caregivers can use if they think they are a good fit for their family. Thanks for talking about hidden messages with us today, Elaine. It's given us a lot to think about. Please join us next time when we discuss how to incorporate peers into children's lives in this time of social distancing. Also, don't forget to check out our website at publicboard.ca for additional resources and podcasts. Take good care, and bye for now.